Oh hey, Professor Dave here. In this next video, we're going to do something a little surprising using sub-Ds. Now normally sub-Ds are great for stuff that's very organic and therefore not particularly accurate. However, we're going to use accuracy and curves. Yes, you heard me right. Here is the final mug we'll be getting to in just a minute, built from a single curve. Using curves is one of 3 different approximate ways to build sub-Ds. Let's look at the other 2 ways quickly. So many beginners start with just basic primitives, the box, cylinder, sphere, and a few more. As you get more comfortable, like I have, you'll start working with faces. Let me hit the tab key here, and you'll start with a single face, and then through a series of extrusions, build more complex forms. Those are the 2 basic ways I have typically built, but today we're going to build using curves. So I'll start with a circle. I said we're going to build one curve. It is a circle. I'm going to go to the standard menu here, and I'm going to do the default circle. And for a snapping point, we'll hit 0 on the keyboard, and we'll come off to the side. And that's your basic default circle. The problem with this guy, if you turn on the control points, this is a degree 2 curve, and it's not going to work with sub-Ds. Let me highlight the problem by just pulling one of the points, and you can see it's got a sharp crease or corner there. So we could either rebuild this, which is under the edit menu. Let's do that. Edit, rebuild, select the curve, right click, and we want to go from degree 2 to degree 3. I think I'm just going to keep 6 control points. The number is not that important, but I would recommend you keep it even. You'll see why coming up. Hit OK. And now you'll notice that these control points are away from the curve. So any of them that move, no pinching. I'll show you the second way right now. We'll just delete this guy. That's a couple of steps there. So you can start a circle, same as before, but before you draw it, click on deformable. That'll just bump it up to degree 3 immediately. And make sure it's on degree 3, and then change the point count right away. That's the 6 we entered before. Now I want to snap it on the origin, which makes things easier, so I'll hit 0 as the starting point. I'm holding down Shift, so I'm coming straight out. And that's pretty quick and easy. So let's just double check this by looking at the control points, F10 on PC, or you can go over to this icon to turn the control points on. We are almost there. Let's go to the sub-D tools. So this curve, even though it's deformable, it's still not quite ready for sub-Ds. We have to do a little bit of extra magic. So this icon here, which is make the curve sub-D friendly, will make it perfectly ready. Now nothing changed, but that's good. It's going to be exactly the way we built it. So if you ever have issues with curves and sub-Ds, just make sure to make them sub-D friendly. Okay, so I've got this ready to go. I'm going to copy and paste it. Control C, Control V, and then move the copy up a bit, and then just scale this guy. So let's now talk about the sub-D curve commands. These are located right here. Notice there's only 4. We've got a couple sweeps, we got a revolve, and a loft, which is what we're going to use. So I'm going to pick these 2 curves now that they're prepared and friendly, and we'll do the loft. Sub-D loft, not the regular loft, the sub-D loft. Since they're a copy of each other, they should have the seams line up. So just right click to approve. Let's bring this option over here. One long segment. So typically you want to have 3 or 4 so you can have additional adjustments. Let's go with 4 on this guy and hit OK. Now it looks really accurate, which is what we're after. But it is still sub-Ds. I'm going to hit Tab, and there's the box mode you're familiar with. Okay, our mug does not have a bottom. Let's go to a really cool command called sub-D fill hole. It's right up here. And we're going to double-click on that edge. Notice when you double-click, you go all the way around. Right-click to accept. I'm going to also accept the patch style automatic. So right-click one more time. And let's take a look. Notice the resulting fill hole command gives us quads. So I purposely made this mug with 6 sides so that the even number would hopefully give us quads on the bottom, and it did. So by a quad, this is going to be very important for future building, is just a face with 4 sides. So notice everywhere else has got 4 sides. So whenever possible, if not every single place, have your geometry with 4 sides. Okay, so that closed off nicely. Now by default, sub Ds will be perfectly smooth. So we have the same situation here. Let's go ahead and use one of my strategies, which is where I make creases everywhere just to speed and make the modeling a little easier. Okay, so I've gone all the way around. I believe I've got all 6 of those edges, and normally it is smooth, like I said. In this case, we're just going to go up to the crease command and hit right-click for the hard crease. Now, nothing changes in box mode, but when we hit tab, notice I have a nice crisp edge. So perfectly fine. We're just going to use that for a while. We can always switch it back to the uncreased. Okay, now we're going to do something that is really tricky. We're going to make a lip of this mug/cup. So I'm going to double click on this top edge here. Actually, we have a curve there. I am going to just hide that, keep it out of the way. I want to make sure I get the edge and not the curve. So I'm just going to do a quick hide command. Typically, I would put that on its own layer. Now I can make sure I'm getting the edge here. So double click, goes all the way around. We're going to do a combo command. This is where we scale and extrude at the same time. So everyone knows how to hopefully scale. So we've got these square handles, and when I hold down shift, they go out in all directions. That's kind of a uniform scale. But if I also hit control or command, we're now doing a scale and extrude at the same exact time. So it's a little confusing just by looking at it in smooth mode. But if we switch over to box mode, now you can see exactly what happened. We just made a perfectly uniform lip going over and straight out. Okay, that was the trickiest thing. Let's get this edge here. Double click, go all the way around, and we'll go back to the extrude, which is, we're going to go vertical. So we're going to grab onto that sphere or ball on there, and we're going to come up for the lip. All right, let's see how this looks when we smooth it out. And we've got the usual defaults, which is perfectly fine, but we're going to keep this a little sharper just so we can make the next couple of steps a little easier. So I'm going to double click here and double click there. I believe we should be able to do this at the same time. And we'll just go to the same crease command, right click for the hard crease. It should show up by default a little bit thicker, if you can't tell, but let's go into smooth mode and just make sure. So there you go. That is sub Ds with all the advantages of continuing to edit and tweak and push and pull, but it's pretty sharp and crisp. Okay, next step is we're going to give this some wall thickness. So again, we're in sub Ds. We can select the whole object. Here is the sub D offset. I recommend always going out for any of the offset commands, just so you won't have any self-intersections. The distance says 2. Let's see if that works. Other things you want to check for is delete the input, yes, otherwise you have multiple copies on top of each other. And solid should be yes. So you don't want to have any openings or gaps. Let's just see how this 2 units looks. That's a little bit on the thin side, so this is a very common situation. We'll just hit Control Z or Command Z to undo it. And then you can right-click to repeat the command. So I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to change the distance from 2. Let's go up to 5. And right-click. So that looks a little bit better. Let's hit the smooth mode with the tab key. And that looks pretty good, pretty good. So I'm about to do the handle, but I'm going to do a backup copy. This is a smart idea. Just in case we have any issues and want to go backwards, we won't have as far to go back or to the beginning. So select the whole object, copy, paste, and we're going to move this guy off to the side. So now we'll do our work on just one of the copies. And if there's any problems, we have the backup right there. So we're going to build a handle on this cup mug. For the following operations, it's always good to be in the box mode. Now, a lot of times people will extrude. I'm going to do a quick extrude here. I'm going to click on that face. Notice how my gumball orients. So if yours is not doing that, you want to go into the gumball and say align to the object. So there, mine flipped around. So that's really handy and pretty critical if you're not exactly X or Y. So a quick demo here. If we extruded this guy, go to the smooth mode here, you can see the issue. It's just pulling from way too much of the geometry. Control Z or Command Z. So the next command is going to be a huge benefit for adding detail and to keep everything in the proper quad format. So before we do this command, make sure you have the near snap on. This is pretty important. We're going to click one single face and then go to the inset command, which is up here on the sub-D toolbar, inset sub-D edges. Now the reason I have near snap on is this can be a little bit tricky. So I'm going to start from one of the vertexes and come in and see how the near snaps along that edge. If I didn't do that, I would end up with a situation like this, and I wouldn't be able to tell what's happening or where it's going to go. So I just want to control that. So I'm going to come in a little bit. Now the beauty of the inset is I've got quads. There's one in the middle, obviously, but the other 4 surrounding it are also quads. So let's do that exact same thing here on the bottom face. Just select the face, right-click to repeat the command. And it looks like it's got that dimension remembered from the prior one, so I can just right-click to accept that. Now, this is way too wide of a handle, so we're going to pick that face, and notice the gumball's aligning nicely. I'm going to scale that in, so it's more of a grippable handle size. Same thing with the bottom one, scale it in. That one's probably a little bit too tall, not a problem. We'll scale it back down. I do those separately. Now it's ready for the extrude. I'm going to pick the face, use that sphere or ball shape to come out just a little bit, and then we'll come out farther. Now each step I come out, I'm going to do a little bit of maneuvering. So I'm going to rotate. I can use this little waffle guide to bring it down. And that looks about right. We'll do one more. And use the arc to rotate. We can push and pull and move. And we'll do the exact same thing with the bottom of the handle. Extrude out. Extrude out again. This time it needs some moving. So we're going to go up a bit, rotate, and just a series of steps. Extrude, and then this guy's going to move and rotate. Now we're ready for a really cool step here, and that is the bridge. It needs to have both sides match. And this is really easy when you have the 4-sided single face, 4-sided single face. It's going to work perfectly. Okay, so I'm going to click on this face here. That doesn't know if I'm done yet because you could be picking other faces, but I'm done, so I have to right-click and let it know. Now I'm on to the second set, right-click, and there it's about to connect. Notice by default, a lot of these commands will still have a single segment or face, and so we can go to 2. That gives us a little more control, and I'm going to hit OK. Let's now check with Tab how smooth that is, and it's pretty cool. One thing I recommend you do is spend some time cleaning stuff up. So you can tell this is a little thicker on some of the curves, so I would probably pick any combination of edges or loops. You can pick a whole loop by double-clicking, and then move that off to the side, lift it up, rotate it, and just look for consistency. That's going to be the key here. So whatever this distance is as it goes around, it should stay the same. Looks like it's a little thinner at the bottom. So you may want to just pick a couple faces at a time and bring them up. All right, let's look at how we are so far. Gonna hit Tab, and I've noticed a problem. I had 6 segments going around, and notice how the handle really pulls from way too much. Wouldn't it be nice if we had this one segment vertically about half that size? I think there'd be less pulling from a farther section. So that's exactly why I made this copy here. So we're going to take this guy and just hit delete. I'll bring this guy into the center stage. And this is a really interesting command I rarely use, but this is the perfect example of when to do it. I've tried to keep the sub-D model as simple as possible. But on some occasions, you need to get extra detail. So the command we're looking for is called subdivide. And that is going to add extra faces, basically 2 by 2. So it's 4 times more detailed. So at this point, we can make the handle now come from a smaller section, like a 1/12 round instead of 1/6. So it will hopefully give us a better look and feel. I'm going to go ahead and do that and speed it up. Okay, with the second mug version done, let's address some of the other situations here that we did temporarily just to make our job easier. And that is these sharp creases. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the creases just by double-clicking, go over to, this is the remove crease. This is how you create them. There's two different kinds to create, but to remove either kind, you're going to go over here just to remove those. So notice how it gets nice and rounded. What I'm going to do is go back to box mode, and we're going to get some extra detail back into here, because if it's too rounded, sometimes it loses its shape and definition. So this is a really powerful command called bevel. So double click, we're going to go all the way around there. And this is the equivalent of a NURBS fillet. So we're going to go over the bevel command, which is the cube with a little rounded corner there. I think this is another situation where you want to have the near snap on. Right now it's defaulting to 3 segments. That might be too much detail over there. So I go down to 1 or 2, I think is working just fine. So there's 2 segments from 1. But notice how the geometry is tightly grouped around that corner. So when we hit the tab key, so it's a nice rounded fillet corner. So not exactly a fillet, but even better. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing here. I think I'm going to take this edge and just hit delete. We don't need it. Just to show you that, if you have faces or edges where you don't want them, you can just delete them. Let's do the exact same bevel right here. Double click, go around. Always make sure you have a full ring. And there's the bevel command. It should have the same settings as last time. I'm just going to eyeball this. Let's hit tab. The top 2 edges, I'm going to recommend continuing and put a bevel there as well. You don't want sharp geometry. So there you have it. We made something really clean and accurate using sub-Ds and curves. You didn't think it was possible. So a quick summary, there's only 5 commands in all of the sub-D commands that use curves. We have 2 different sweeps, we have a loft, we have a revolve, and the multi-pipe. So don't forget, there's 2 cool tips I shared with you for making sub-Ds a little bit more fun and organized to work with. The first one was I have sharp creases anywhere there's an edge. And then when I'm done, I can uncrease those and use the bevel command to create what looks like smooth, beautiful fillets. I was Dave.